Ever heard of desiccation tolerance? And well, okay, no, I'm not talking about, some ability to go several days without moisturizer. I already have to listen to my partner. She lectures me all the time about not using lotion every day when I should. No, this this is something a few plants and brine shrimp and midge larvae and microscopic water bears are capable of, surviving a complete drying out. And I want to talk about it because I bought a couple of little plants to do an entirely different episode, completely different thing. And I set them in a window and I came home from work to find that they had fried. So now that episode has to wait, and now we're just, we're going to talk about plants that don't fry so easily. Oh, and I never bug y'all about this, but please like, subscribe, share these videos, share. I love talking about this. I want to grow an audience and share this content with other people because I believe plants and the interactions with humans are just an amazing thing. Anyway, we always talk about plants that need, so much water and all these instructions on how to keep them alive. And we hear about desert plants like the saguaro cactus or barrel cactus that hoard water to survive the lean times. But this idea that a plant could completely dry out, turn into a little green potato chip and survive? I mean, that's just crazy, right? And maybe my sisters dream of the perfect plant to try keeping alive because she kills them all. Anyway, but that is just what Selaganella lepidophylla does. It's also known as the resurrection plant or the false rose of Jericho. And, well, okay, to be fair, this still has about 5% water retention in there, but I mean, look at this guy. This is a pretty dry looking plant, and that is called desiccation tolerance against the process anhydrobiosis. And this is not the same as drought tolerance, which is more about how plants learn to cope and avoid dehydrating if they can. Often at the extreme scale, you would call it desiccation resistance, which is locking up the moisture inside so that it can't escape, which unfortunately that means the plant also goes into dormancy. Now, most plants are pretty much screwed if they go below 25% water content. And this desiccation tolerance is about going with the flow, or I mean, I guess the lack thereof, right, in the case of water. And it's a reversible state, right? This is the same plant after 18 hours soaking in water. That thing is alive. This reversible state, it's kind of like suspended animation, but not exactly. And it has nothing to do with heat. This is a desert plant from Mexico, but it also, wind and cold, harsh air of the Arctic can lead to dry conditions as well, and the same evolution. Some species of alpine Ramonda, which is, like Cerbica, Myconi, Nataliae, this is a plant that has developed the ability in frigid cliffs and mountainsides of the Pyrenees and the Balkans. And some of these plants can survive years this way. Seeds especially. Seeds have been known to be viable over 2,000 years. An example is a date palm where scientists got the idea, let's take some of these seeds found in archaeological digs and see if we can sow them. And they were able to sprout 2,000-year-old seeds into date palms. Insane. But actual plants, there's more and more. This one can go from years to decades, and there's some evidence that the Resurrection fern is another plant that could make it maybe near a century. But for comparison, the average human, we're about 60% water, and I mean, maybe in some instances a little lower, but if we drop by 6%, then we go delirious. And by 12%, it's a pretty strong chance that we die. So, 40% water content and below, we're essentially dead raisinets in just a few minutes, because the macro molecules, cells and such inside our body require all of that water content in order to function. Other plants that survive extremes, there's quite a few. They keep finding more. There's a list right there you can check out. And if you're feeling really plant nerdy, their genomes and information, it's all preserved on a website that you can check out at desiccation.novagene.com. And if you're also curious, are there any animals that can do this? Yeah, well, the brine shrimp, Artemia franciscana. What? You don't know what that is? Sea monkeys. If you know what sea monkeys are, that's what it is. That's how you buy them, and you add water and they come back to life. The largest capable animal, it would be the larvae of a type of midge, a little tiny fly. And beyond that, you just get a bunch of microscopic tardigrades and nematodes and rotifers and widgy-whatsits, and those cute little microscopic six-legged tardigrades, the six-legged bears, are studied extensively, probably because they're so damn cute. They get all the damn press. But plants are not microscopic. You can see them doing the exact same thing. And bryophytes are a type of plant that have had this ability for eons. And these plants have been around far longer than most. That would be moss, liverworts, hornworts, so on. And they're often, by the way, mislabeled as primitive species, as if they stopped evolving, but, nothing does, even us. Hello, the ability to drink milk, or even the Andean people evolving to better breathe thin air or metabolize arsenic because it's in their water. Anyway, I digress. This little guy, he's a type of spike moss, not a bryophyte, but a lycophyte. And this would be the next step in plant evolution, with roots and stems and a vascular system like most modern plants, but they have spores instead of seeds. And they're somewhere between true mosses and ferns. And there's also quite a few grasses that have evolved into this ability as well. But this ability probably came about after plants, that evolved from sea-based, land-based life, comparatively dry, in case you didn't know. Actually, it's even older than plants, I would say. Probably in ancestral bacteria, algae, and such that had to survive dry times on a harsh planet. But the life of a plant in a watery place went under environmental pressures when their home slowly became a tidal pool or whatever. Animals, they lost this ability because we opted for mobility. You got no water? Go find water, right? But we do still maintain it in some animals in their primordial stages, in eggs and larvae, right? Like that midge that I mentioned. Likewise, for plants, you can see it in seeds of many plants, which is why we can ship beans and rice and viable seeds all over the world to feed people or amuse gardeners. And so how do the plants do this, right? Well, various ways, but I don't think you really want me to go too sciencey in this video. So a common theme is that the plant cell, the walls become rigid or they fold. The stomata, that's holes in leaves that function as the plant kingdom's version of airways and perspiration, those close up. and vacuoles shrink to lower water loss. And these vacuoles, that's the little water storage tanks inside plant cells, inside all cells really. But in plant cells, the cells fold in, and in us, they shatter when there's no water holding things in stasis. And also, these plants make trehalose and sucrose sugars into a glass-like matrix inside of cells, capable of replacing the lost water and protecting proteins and DNA until water returns. There's even antioxidants that are produced, and those kick in to keep oxygen from damaging dried out tissues, because that's what oxygen does. And while it seems like a novelty, I mean, this is something I got at a novelty store. It's an awesome little store called Curious Nature. You should check it out in Phoenix, Arizona. The process is important to understand scientifically because, well, scientists research it to see if there are uses for other things in medicine, in preservation, astrobiology even, because, I mean, it extends the understanding of what alien species could survive. But a common theme, again, is preservation. And in fact, one of the largest genetic resource seed banks in the world is the USDA National Center for Genetic Resources Preservation, NCGRP. That was a rough one. It's in Fort Collins, Colorado. They have over 1 million collections of plant germplasm. That's mostly seeds, but it can be, plant materials that can be propagated. But altogether, this is over 18,000 species, and almost all of this collection is stored as dried seeds, leveraging that desiccation tolerance. And a third of those seeds have been there for 30 to 40 years. And that's amazing, but seeds, they do have a limit. And they're not really in suspended animation. It may be close, but they're really just aging, deteriorating slower in a seed bank's controlled environment. And so scientists are constantly searching for innovations to improve dry storage so that we can preserve the building blocks of natural diversity for even longer, in case we have a mass extinction event. Oh wait, that's right. We've been having one of those for a while now on Earth right now. Anyway, we've been preserving seeds in dry storage, honestly, for millennia. The dry rice and beans that you buy at the store. Hello. But could we take it a step further in space travel, for example? So on that theme, NASA has researched for scientists on the space station, maybe using preserved small samples of microbes or whatever they're going to conduct an experiment on long missions with no need for a giant refrigeration unit, because it costs maybe $1,500 a pound in 2025 at least to send stuff to space, plus the logistics nightmares and the space in space. Anyway, and for the same reason, we could improve storage of medicines. It's expensive to maintain required refrigeration for some medical materials. I mean, imagine transporting it without raising the temperature or throwing off water content over long distances. In fact, now, on top of that, imagine you're trying to do it for an arid third world country, maybe in hopes of trying to prevent some crazy new pandemic from spreading, especially when major countries have stopped, they've cut off funding for you on some idiotic political whim. Anyway, researching ways to improve the stability and the efficacy of medical materials improves lives. In fact, another example would be vaccines. Yeah, those things that a bunch of sciencey nut jobs are trying to convince you are bad for you, even though Every lick of science says they're not. They save lives, if you didn't know. They're trying to make those better still with mRNA vaccines that are easier, cheaper, and faster to make because you don't need a lab-grown virus. And desiccation tolerance could help solve a problem with their short shelf life. But, hey, the world got misinformed there by people not qualified to discuss it, and now nobody trusts mRNA vaccines either. Oh, and there went the funding for that, and we're also firing CDC directors left and right, so anyway, thinking further out, we're also looking at ways the concepts can be used to preserve human cells even. And now, don't get me wrong, I doubt we'll be using anhydrobiosis to freeze dry humans for long space trips. Our cellular composition is just too complex and not built for it. Like I said, all our cells would crack and shatter, literally. But that's not stopping scientists from exploring whether LEA proteins or that sugar trehalose can be used to preserve some cells, maybe even a small organ or two. Anything that makes it possible to preserve essential life-saving materials without refrigeration. And furthermore, we could also engineer more resilient crops to save us here on Earth. Forget space. Global warming means we might not have the means to keep crops thriving and feed this growing population. Crops that could survive the lean times? That might make a difference. One hopes. But anyway, there you go. There you have it. Desiccation tolerance. This ability to dry out like everyone's crazy drunk uncle never could. And anhydrobiosis. It's a mouthful, but we'll call that your word of the day. It's not just some weird plant survival trick. It could teach us how to be more resilient, which might be the only way some of us get through whatever the hell the political world is throwing at us these days. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's Twigsy, turpentine, and some awesome weird plants. Ooh.